りおしまい。
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
and your host on the right, Brock,
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Dragon Ball, as usual, and in particular, episode 105, which is called Who is Yajirobe? Now, before we get started, if you like what you hear, please give us a like. Hit that red subscribe button down below. We upload new episodes on YouTube Mondays and Thursdays, on Rumble Tuesdays and Fridays. So be sure to check us out on both of our platforms. I don't think there's any other business to attend to besides encouraging you to check out our Obi-Wan Kenobi series. We have 2 episodes on the Disney Plus show Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's not very good. You should watch us take it down with our friend Gandalf, who I need to make his beard red on his sprite, but other than that, he's pretty much accurate.
Right, we've recorded the first, which covers the first 4 episodes of Kenobi, where I was a bit in the dark on just how bad it was. And so we're doing a second episode to cover 5 and 6, and I am fully caught up.
So we'll do 5 and 6 in like an overview of the whole series.
So yeah, I look forward to that.
That'll be coming out in the next couple of days after this episode releases. So be on the lookout. Other than that, though, we are excited to get into episode 105. After all, we're getting into the triple digits here. And we are, we're only about 60 episodes away from being done with the entire show. So,
yeah, for context,
excited about that.
I think 60 was the Kamehameha versus the Dodon Paw, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's 60 episodes.
So we've come a ways. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started on this, which is Who is Yajirobe 105. I think in the English it is. Let me check real quick.
Here comes
in the English,
Yajirobe.
It's Here Comes Yajirobe, which, it's whatever. So
it's called Enter Yajirobe, the Strange Boy in the translation.
There you go.
So yeah.
So I didn't write it. Well, Here Comes Yajirobe, or I think Here Comes Yajirobe is fine. There you go. So the first thing we see is that Goku and the Yaj square off, with the latter accusing the former of thievery. Goku, being indignant at this accusation, indicates his stolen Dragon Ball as proof that Yaj is friends of Piccolo and, in turn, Tambourine, the murderer of Krillin. Afterwards, the two begin to clash, and after several trades, Yaj ends up in a pile of rubble. The two end up evenly matched, with Goku revealing his identity and Yajirobe not revealing his.
There is a protectiveness that Yajirobe has about his name, right? That Goku doesn't know who he is in a strange way, right? And he mentioned it later on.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time to really crack open the egg that is Yajirobe. So after, and this Yajirobe can only exist in a post Krillin world. Why is that, Brock?
Yajirobe is sort of a resetting of the cycle. He is representative of sort of the inverse of what Goku lost with Krillin. He's sort of this wisdom in the wild that is he has the Dragon Ball. He lives out there in nature, but he can contend with a new level of monsters, right? So he's sort of a reflection of that.
Right, and it's also to recenter Goku on what Goku has lost along the way. So,
Yes.
and this has to do with the Jungian idea of finding one's inner child, let's say, and that's why in the Japanese he's called the strange boy, is because he mirrors Goku as Goku was at the beginning of the series, and it harkens back to what Goku needs to recover, kind of that innocence and that good nature that he once had without wielding and without having knowledge of malice in order to challenge up to Piccolo.
I think
And so the
yeah.
Yajirobe's mirroring of him echoes throughout this whole season or this
Well,
whole arc.
one thing I want to say is imagine a mirror of Goku that had not mastered his hunger through his ascent up the Tower of Korin, right? Symbolically by imbibing the Senzu bean, right? And so that is a thing, and then it's tested of him afterward whenever he goes down to Baba's palace, right? And she tests if he's controlled by his hunger or if he can defend himself. And so this is a version of Goku that didn't do that, and he's completely controlled by his hunger. Everything is about eating. He's in almost a ravenous Ouroboros state in a constantly consuming, um, chaotic world, right?
Yes,
Whereas
but then he
Goku has made
also
contact with more of a logos, right?
but then Yajirobe also has that facet of him that is protective of his identity and has the samurai tradition as he has a katana, right?
Yes.
It's something that's a little more expanded than just what Goku was with a ravenous hunger.
Yeah.
It's not even as just Goku, but it's just one aspect of him that's really reflected here. That's something he needs to get back into, which is that self reliance that Yajirobe has exhibited here, um, and we're gonna see how that plays out later on. Because I mean, we've already seen Goku's mistake, as in he is not necessarily worried about his own survivability, but he seeks vengeance blindly, which turns out not to be a good course of action.
This is
And
something
it's the wisdom that is discovered in Yajirobe. Go ahead.
yeah, it's an enlightenment for Goku, right? It really he has to broaden his sight by coming into contact with sort of I don't want to say a polar opposite, but definitely something that's opposed to the spirit of Tambourine, right?
Well, and it also levels Goku's ego because Goku is such a talented fighter that at this point, like Yajirobe's never joined the tournament. He doesn't know the Yajirobe's this strong. First of all, and second of all, he eats the fish because it's there, not knowing it's anyone else's and not really caring necessarily.
But I also want to point out Goku's I humbly accept his
Yes.
self-centered interpretation of the way the world has manifested itself around him is something that we need to put a bookmark on because we're going to return to it as we get further into this arc.
Yeah. So let's just mark that with your highlighters, everyone, as we continue.
Right.
So Goku thinks that Yajirobe is a friend of Piccolo and Tambourine because he thinks that Yajirobe has his Dragon Ball, and he finds it hypocritical that Yajirobe would call him a thief when Yajirobe is the one that stole his Dragon Ball.
Right. And we see that Goku is too blind to see what we as the viewers see, which is that Yajirobe's Dragon Ball is the 1-star ball, which had been previously owned by Pilaf.
And again, this is like the almost foolish version of what Goku could have become.
So this is the fool of Goku
Mhm.
that has not become sort of as enlightened. Not entirely, right? Because he has the ability to become enlightened. I really think that there's a comparison between Goku's mode of being and Yajirobe's mode of being to sort of the relationship between Buddhism and Shintoism. Pure Land Buddhism versus more ethereal ways of thinking, right? Because there's a very naturalistic root in that. And so there's a respect for movement, as we've
Well, see,
talked
I'm
about, right?
thinking of it as more of an evolutionary psychology point of view, and being that Yajirobe is more based on self-preservation. I mean, he will run away from a fight that he thinks he can't win, right?
Sure.
And so those aspects go back to, let's say, our ancestry, our DNA, right? In which at one time we had to exist on that kind of level.
Well, that's why we can outrun a lot of animals.
Yeah, and so Goku looking back at this shows him like this point of evolution that has been lost, and this wisdom that can be gained by gleaming into that, and gleaming into this mountain man that exists and subsists outside of the realm of society, outside of capsules, outside of hierarchies, even, let's say,
A
or
natural expression, right? That
uh-huh.
it's not a socially constructed strength, right?
And so since it's so strong, Goku immediately finds himself kind of enamored with Yajirobe, and from this very beginning, he reveals that he is Goku.
Well, it also seems there is a hermetic sort of tradition whenever it comes to the samurai as well. And this is sort of this wandering samurai type character who's isolated and also sort of on a path, right? But on a sort of a lone samurai, almost like a comedic lone samurai, right?
Yeah, and we'll see how Yajirobe's character develops, because he also has development in this arc. Actually, most of his development takes place in this arc.
Right.
And it gets really interesting how Yajirobe mirrors a piece of Goku, because later on in Z we're gonna see Yajirobe do some amazing things.
Yes.
But we'll get to that when we get there. So the two end up pretty much evenly matched as Goku reveals his own identity. Yajirobe protects his, as let's say someone who has to deal constantly with the threat of chaos would be hesitant to, let's say, reveal the truth, their vulnerability, to someone they don't know.
Much more guarded, right?
Right. And it shows and I mean that's kind of how Goku was at the beginning. I mean, think of what Goku did when he was approached by Bulma in the first place. He threw her car, right? He tried to attack her with a power pole. So it is very much a reflection of that.
Yeah. I think it really fits within sort of the cosmic picture of what we've talked about also, where the process of Goku coming out of that was that enlightenment that it seems that Yajirobe has not started to go through.
Right. And so, but it is something that can be reached back into for knowledge that Goku had not previously, um or hasn't presently, I should say, embodied. And so back
Right.
on the island where the Go crew moves, Roshi, Chaozu, and Tien depart to find the rest of the Dragon Balls. And afterwards, the rest of the Go crew buries Krillin in the Cairo capsule. Once they say their goodbyes, Bulma places Krillin in the safest place she can think of, her underwear drawer.
I do like that Launch is still like trying to flirt with Tien even as he's leaving. And
Yeah.
he like blushes as he flies away.
Not only that, but Launch makes a joke about how Krillin looks cool when he's in the Cairo capsule. And I think in the English she says that he looks peaceful. But either way, it's something that is very, another just one of those endearing notes from a motherly figure to her son,
Mm-hmm.
after he's passed, and so everyone really appreciates that. And Bulma makes sure that everyone's ready and everyone said goodbye to Krillin before she like puts him away in the capsule and all that. And then she puts him in her underwear drawer where Oolong makes a joke about being jealous that he's in there with all of her panties. And it's funny because it shows that clip and then it shows Bulma saying, "Do you want to be dead too?" So you can know how it feels like. And she has this giant hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And the interaction between her and Oolong is immediately mirrored by Yamcha and Puar, who just look aghast at what's happening.
Right. They're both like
Because their relationship, even though similarly natured, is so vastly different than
he's
what they have.
well, he's oriented toward a much more good path than Bulma.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he's more integrated with Poir. Whereas there's this discordant nature of the relationship between Oolong and Bulma, which is evident and keeps manifesting itself as we go forward through the episodes, right?
Oh, yeah. And so the only other thing I want to mention here is Yamcha wanting to leave with them, and Roshi saying that you're the only one we can rely on if everyone else dies.
I mean,
Promising thought.
it's a pretty good argument.
And I mean, Yamcha can't do anything anyways at the point.
That's
At
true.
the
He's on
moment.
crutches. It's like, what are you
Oh,
gonna do? Just sit in the ship?
and one other thing I want to mention is the voice of God says that they're not going to be okay.
Yeah.
And Oolong says, "What do you mean? They're going to be okay."
Yeah.
Oolong says that.
This is the where boys fear to tread sort of
Yeah.
theme begins with Dragon Ball, right? Which is that you have to have that equalizing voice say, "Okay, this is dangerous."
And it actually be dangerous.
Yes.
And so, right, Turtle says that, and Oolong doesn't want to believe it. He's almost in denial of it
Right.
immediately after that happens. But I think that's a good summation of those events. So back in the wilderness, Goku realizes that the ball Yaj has is only the 1-star ball, and that he made a mistake the whole time. However, Yajirobe insists on continuing their fight, saying that Goku owes him breakfast, and for him to vomit up the fish right then and there.
Give it back.
Give it back. Soon afterwards, Symbol lands and announces his intention to claim the Dragon Ball. Goku recognizes him as the same clan as Tambourine, but Yajirobe wants to eat him instead. So the two have a rock, paper, scissors match, with Yajirobe coming out as the victor to determine who will get to fight Symbol.
I like this.
It's when did we last see rock, paper, scissors?
It's been a while. It's kind of a game now. It actually is a game.
Yeah. And it's something that despite Yajirobe's, let's say, social separation, he understands how to play it.
So that's why I said that he has the ability to become more enlightened, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's really good about even this version of, let's say, almost pre-cosmogonic Goku, right?
Yeah.
I really like that about Yajirobe in the way that he's not necessarily just a fool, you know? Like he's carrying the 1-star ball like Pilaf was. But there is a value in what can be learned
But
from
in a
not
way,
being
he's like
like Pilaf.
he's almost like the foolish or the ignorant Goku rather than the
He always wants
foolish
to, well, the thing
adversary.
is he always wants to be eating and taking things in. He's a consumer, right? He's and so in that
30-year-old consumer.
right, so he doesn't really see anything beyond like this is mine, 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 mine. I just want to take more in. And he's not really outputting. He's not whereas like Goku's socialized, that is outputting, right? And so that's the relationship of being socialized, of being aware outside of yourself and having a higher level identity. Like Goku is able to embody now as sort of the top of a higher a very high level of hierarchy, right?
Right.
And so it is really nice to see that it's represented by the 1-star ball in that sense. Because that whenever you see like Pilaf, whenever he envisions what the world would be like, it's sort of this thing where he's just like separate from everything, and he's just the top of some vague, unrealistic
Oh
thing
yeah, exactly. It's that idea, the idea of it
that it
superseding any
like the
kind
whole
of
entire fantasy
embodiment.
he has is just that it did gather to one, right?
Yeah,
But nothing beyond that.
and that's the one star, right?
Yeah.
And we'll get into more one star symbolism as we continue.
Hmm.
But
Oh, the
after
rock paper scissors match as well.
yes, so the rock paper scissors match, like we were saying, so Yajirobe knows how to play this despite being socially unindoctrinated, let's say, and his ability to participate in the game. And it almost seems that since it's basically a game of luck, it almost seems that Mother Nature has sided on the team of Yajirobe, allowing him to win so that he can get back what he's lost, the nourishment that he has lost from interacting necessarily with Goku.
And it's also a way to say that it is a stronger mode of being to just be self-serving than to be like Goku, who's on a path of revenge.
Right. And even trying to gather nourishment from someone else's stockpile, let's say, is a much more unholy path than what
Right. When you're
Yajirobe
on the
is.
path of revenge, right?
Which
You
Yajirobe
rob.
is that one singular path, like me, I'm gonna worry about myself and subsist, right?
Right.
And that's why it's the 1 star ball. So, as we said, Yajirobe wins the rock paper scissors match and then gets to fight Symbol. Yaj loses in the first round, getting knocked down by Symbol and saying it's been such a weird day meeting so many insanely strong fighters. He then dodges Symbol's lightning and chops him in half. Piccolo senses the death of his child and is extremely distressed at the occurrence, making Pilaf and the homies shudder in fear as he collects himself and readies his next moves. That's kind of where we end the episode. So Yaj not understanding the real depth to which he's plunged is kind of embodied here when he gets knocked down by Symbol. It's to say that not necessarily Yajirobe is weak or that his mode of being is weak, but that he doesn't quite grasp the magnitude of where he's at this point.
He just wasn't expecting to get hit that hard. You know? It's kind of he plays it off like that really well, where it knocks him flat on his back, then he immediately pops back up, and he's
It's like
like,
I was just doing
"Whoa!"
my morning exercise
He's like, "I really didn't expect to run into people this strong."
or my
Jeez.
pre-meal exercise, yeah.
And so then he takes it seriously.
And once he takes it seriously, he shows that not only, let's say, subsistence and responsibility for one's own self is powerful, but his honor to his name, which he exhibits here because Symbol calls him Fatty. He says, "My name's not Fatty, it's Yajirobe," right? And that's the first time we hear his name. And he draws his katana at that point, and we see that the honor he gives to his name and his reputation and his responsibility in being subsistent on his own is kind of what reciprocates the fueling of his strength.
Yeah, it is a reciprocal thing where he is able to build his strength based on being true. He is true to himself, and so he
Right.
doesn't live in a dishonest way, you could say, right? And
Yeah.
he's not. He's by being wild, he can get away with living in chaos and almost living animal like, right? And hunting his prey
But being
essentially.
forthright in that mode of being allows him to subsist that way very successfully.
Exactly. And so this is sort of that mirror wisdom that we were talking about, right? Just a lower level of thinking or a
And so
deeper level for
it's to
Goku.
tell Goku, right? Like go back to the previous high levels of hierarchy and apply maintenance to them in order to achieve where you're at. Because remember what's happened in the world, right? Like there is no guardianship of the spiritual father at this time. And so Goku needs to reaffirm and rebuild the past hierarchies that he's already built up because the world hierarchy, let's say at this time, has kind of been flattened. and everything needs to play out again in the chaos and the dance that it happens so that it can be rearranged in the hierarchy that's necessary and natural for the world.
I also want to point out the continuation of the theme of having a name that's known, because that's what Goku was doing in the previous arc before he
Right,
got
yep.
into this hierarchy. And so there's a continuation of that theme with Yajirobe having pride in his name, having pride
Well,
in the
not just
fact that
that,
he
but
has a name that's known, right?
the mark of the demon, Piccolo, right?
Right.
That whole idea of him using his
Using
ego as
his
a
name.
weapon, right? Weaponizing it.
Yeah.
There's a duality in that. We can see how Yajirobe uses his name, how Piccolo uses his name,
And just
and
like I mentioned before, not entirely, but at times he really does seem to represent an inverse sort of energy to the presence of the demons.
yeah, I agree.
I think with that, with that said about Yajirobe, people just don't appreciate him as a character. He's played off mostly as a joke in Z. He has no role to play whenever it comes to, say, Frieza,
Somehow he's mostly a joke, even though he kind of saves the day in Z.
but he's very important to Dragon Ball.
Yeah, well, he's very important in Dragon Ball, very important in the Saiyan Saga. After that, we'll see. But yeah, whatever. So, what do you think about Piccolo being distressed at the occurrence and making the homies shudder in fear?
I feel like Pilaf and the homies are on a roller coaster because every time they think they know how powerful the world has become, it gets more powerful.
Is it this one or the next one where Mai tells Pilaf like, "Hey, we need to get out of here"?
It might be even the one after that,
It,
but
it's one of the ones coming up, I think actually it might be Shu that tells Pilaf like we need to escape the next chance we get, and Mai tells him like, yeah, I mean I this has been I've had a bad feeling about this the whole time, but we'll get to that. I think we do have it saved.
yeah.
I did have to cut one Pilaf scene from this with his bestial magazine,
Oh,
but
yes.
it didn't really serve too much of a purpose.
It was
But to get back to the point, Piccolo being distressed at this, right? Piccolo being the
I do
progenitor of this malice, and this malice being easily dispatched, it seems. Um, Also, that taking some of Piccolo's spirit to produce, all of that combined makes it distressing to Piccolo, not because Symbol is dead, but because this is the first beginnings of the piece of the puzzle that it's not just the Mafaba that can threaten Piccolo's strength.
right. It's not the way that they're playing themselves up so far is that they're a whole rank above mortals, almost like they're a demigod race. And the names like Maju and Mazuka relate to demon family and demon race, right? So they're considered to be sort of a higher level, like almost like an angel, right?
Yeah, like we were saying fallen angels earlier, right?
Which that's the kami spirit, right? Is a dual angel type spirit that can be good or evil. So there's this, as we're entering into this whole idea of Piccolo's influence in the world, that's what the Maju is, right? It is that fallen angel Luciferian spirit in that sense. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, though the stupid uh, Pilaf holding up the porn gag doesn't seem to mean anything, I was wondering if you thought there was any meaning to Piccolo sleeping with his eyes open.
Um, I mean, Piccolo sleeping with his eyes open is clearly intended to show the attention he pays, even when he's unconscious. Let's say, right? Because paying attention, that is almost a power in a way, and it can be used. It's a tool, and it can be used for good or it can be used for ill. Right? Paying attention, and so Piccolo here being using it, sleeping with his eyes open shows that even in his unconscious, he's able to pay attention.
I think also
It's kind of that idea of like having eyes all the way around your head, right? But it's
in an
almost a
unholy
malevolent.
manner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to point out that having eyes all the way around your head there's this idea here that it's a tyrannical state analogy that we're about to come into. And so what is the eye, right? The eye is also a masculine sort of expression,
The gaze, yeah.
which is the opposite of the unconscious or the wisdom that Goku's trying to sort of glean from interacting with Yajirobe. So there's a conscious, which is this ego driven expression that Piccolo Daima or King Piccolo is going to represent. But then there's sort of the difference between ego and pride, so to speak, because there's a pride that Yajirobe takes in his name. So I think that there's a sort of duality where there's a higher level of thinking and a lower level of thinking, and that really plays more into the cultural tone of Dragon Ball, right? To see it that they're trying to sort of express a dualism.
Yeah, definitely. And they are expressing it pretty well. I mean, Piccolo here, and as we're going to see in the next few episodes, Piccolo here representing the antithesis to the spirit our heroes are trying to represent it specifically. Um, Goku, it's going to elucidate more and more how Piccolo is instantiated in the story. And it's going to give us a little more backstory as to, or background as to how Piccolo operates and his mode of being going forward.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good place to leave off. I don't have anything else for this episode. It was a pretty quick one.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
I hope that didn't mess anything up.
Levels. You're good.
If that messed something up, I apologize. Anyways, this was episode 105, which is Here Comes Yajirobe in the English.
Enter Yajirobe,
Or
the
Enter Yajirobe,
boy.
the strange boy. And I mean, the strange boy itself, we talked about the significance of that. So if you liked what you heard, please give us a like. Subscribe to our channel. We upload new episodes Mondays and Thursdays on YouTube and Tuesdays and Fridays on Rumble. So please look for us on those platforms. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And we hope you guys have a good night.